The Houston area market is still red hot, and there are no signs of it cooling down. Hi, this is Manuel Mata, your Houston area realtor. And in today's video, we're gonna go and review the Houston Association of Realtors market report for April 2021. We're gonna compare what happened in April 2020 versus what happened in April 2021. Now, before we go into the numbers, let's talk about what happened in April 2020. It was just a few weeks into the lockdown or the quarantine or whatever you want to call it. And as far as real estate, we didn't know how to navigate through that space just yet. We didn't know if we could show houses. We didn't know if we can do open houses. And so a lot of things were in limbo during that time. And so the numbers in April 2020 might reflect that. And we'll see what it does in the next future. I mean, one thing we know is that real estate came back with a vengeance after the summer. And so it's interesting to see what the numbers are going to look like for the next couple of months. So let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers. Total property sales increased by 58%. You can see that only 7,169 homes closed in April 2020. Again, I suspect that would have to do with the pandemic and the lockdown that we had just entered at the time. The next interesting number to look at is total active listings. In April 2020, we were just under 40,000 active listings. Compare that to April 2021 when we had just under 23,000 listings. That's a decrease of 42, almost 43%. We had a 47.4% increase in the number of single family homes sold in April 2021 compared to April 2020. Now we're gonna get into price changes. And you can see that the average single family home sold in 2020 was sold for $309,000. Compare that to $371,000 in April 2021. That's a 20% increase year over year. The median sales price also jumped by almost 18%. You can see it went from $250 to $295. Single family months inventory dropped down from 3.4 months down to 1.4. Now, to clarify what that number represents, it's the number of months to completely sell out of any inventory if no new homes come on the market. So in other words, if nothing else came on the market, we would completely sell out of all the single family homes in about a month and a half. And the last interesting number is the single family pending sales. As you can see, we had a low number of 6,463 in April 2020. Compare that to 11,140 this year. That's a 72.4% increase year over year. Again, I want to remind you that that low number in 2020 may have to do with the recent lockdown that we had just experienced. Now, before we get into why there's such an increase in prices and increase in demand, someone asked me last month if there was any way to see a trend over a longer period of time other than just year over year. For example, like a 5-year or a 10-year trend. And of course we can. What I did was I went and researched what the average sales price of a home was in April 2016 and in April 2011. And as you can see on the screen, the average sales price of a home in April 2016 was $278,000. That's an increase of 33% or $93,000. Going back even further, the average sales price in April 2011 was $202,000. That's an increase of 84% or $169,000. Now, a disclaimer, these are just averages, but you can see that if you bought a home 5 or 10 years ago, you would have gained substantial amount of equity by now. Every neighborhood or every part of Houston is completely different. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions about your specific neighborhood or your house. So now let's talk about some of the causes of why such an increase in demand for homes all of a sudden. Well, if you hear the news, you know that we are in historically low interest rates. I mean, a simple Google search and you'll see plenty of articles talking about how we are historically low interest rates. Yes, they're fluctuating up and down tiny bit, but historically we're at very low interest rates. And as I showed just right now, if you bought a home 5 or 10 years ago, you're likely to be sitting on a lot of equity in your home. And so what does that mean? It means that you can take that cash, that equity, and go buy a bigger home or a more expensive home at a lower interest rate. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. They're taking advantage of the low interest rates and the fact that they have so much equity in their home and they can just flip it into the next home. And then of course you have the traditional reasons why. You know, people are relocating to Houston people are growing up, right? And they've got to downsize, or they're graduating college, need to move into a place of their own. So you have all those reasons coupled with the fact that, hey, I've got equity, I've got low interest rates, let's go buy another home. And so that explains why there's such a huge demand. Now, why is there such low inventory? Traditionally, inventory was sometimes remedied by new home builders, right? And they just went out there and built more homes and kept up with it. However, they have not been able to keep up with demand for the last couple of years. And then if you've heard the news, just like this article says, lumber prices have increased by a lot. And there's a lumber shortage and a lumber price increase. And so what does that do? Well, less homes are being built right now. The homes that are being built, well, they're being built at a more expensive price, right? And a lot of people who would traditionally buy a new home build as a first-time home buyer are being priced out of that market and therefore being pushed back to the resale market. So what are some of the short-term solutions? Well, one, if interest rates increase, that will curb demand just a little bit. However, we still have pent-up demand that may not make a difference. Two, we can hope that home builders start building more properties and keep up with demand. However, that may be a little bit difficult given the lumber shortage, as we talked about earlier. And so there is really not an easy solution to the problem right now. And so for the time being, what we expect to see is the same amount of activity that we've seen in the last couple of months. Rising prices, more demand, and less inventory. And so to summarize the report, here's what we found. Home sales increased by 58% year over year. The average sales price and the median sales price of a single family home has reached a record level. By the way, that's the same thing we said in March. And so now we're going to be seeing that trend. It'll be interesting to see if that trend continues next month. And at 1.4 months of inventory, we are at a record low for the Houston area. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of months. Stay tuned. Please subscribe to my channel so that I can keep you up to date as to what's going on in the Houston market. Of course, there are also videos on buying and selling real estate, and I also include videos on local businesses here in the Houston area. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.